Hello everyone, I'm Troy Dodds and welcome to the On The Record podcast presented by The Western Weekender. On this podcast I'm joined by special guests who all have such great stories to tell about Penrith and the role they've played in our city. They are Penrith stories told by Penrith people. Today my special guest is Belinda Wollaston. Belinda is one of our top musical theatre exports. She made a name for herself here in Australia before making the leap and heading over to London where her career has flourished. But it all started right here in Penrith. I really hope you enjoy our chat. Belinda, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
First question we always ask, where were you born and where did you grow up?
I was born in Nepean Hospital and I grew up in South Penrith.
Excellent. And where did you go to school?
I went to school at Penrith South Primary School and then went on to Jamison High School.
Now, given the career that you eventually followed, you grow up in a musical household. Is there any pedigree there? Where did this come from?
No, no, there was no history of any kind of music in my family. It all started, I think, from watching Disney films, which I think a lot of people had that influence as well. Just listening to Princess Jasmine and Belle from Beauty and the Beast sing, and I would sit in front of the TV and try and imitate them and sound like them. And then I discovered, singers like Judy Garland and Broadway singers like Patti LuPone, and I would listen to their CDs and I'd lock myself in the bathroom and I pretty much just taught myself how to sing. And that is kind of where it all started, but it was never something that I ever thought that I would ever do professionally. It was something I just loved to do. I was an only child. My parents didn't have a lot of money, so it was my outlet. It was my thing that kept me occupied. And I guess I would go off into a place and dream about singing in front of people and being on stage.
And so when's the first time that you feel like this is a career that you might want to follow, and what do your parents do in regards to helping you follow it?
I think I think for theatre, because before theatre, before I even saw theatre, I just wanted to be like a voice for Disney or like a singer. And then in year 6, we had a school excursion to Jamison High School's matinee of Grease. And it was at that performance of Grease that I was completely sold. And it was very, the girl playing Sandy, I wanted to be her. And I fell in love with the idea of being on stage, and I don't know, something just came over me and I was hooked. So it was in that school hall at Jamison High School that I actually first saw my very first stage show. And then in year 7, we went on an excursion to the Theatre Royal in Sydney to see Les Mis. And that was a very profound moment for me because I remember my music teachers paying for my ticket because my mum couldn't afford it at the time. And there was an interval and I asked if I could just stay in the auditorium because I didn't want to leave. And still to this day, I don't like leaving an intermission. I like to just sit and take up, be in the theatre. And I was just seeing Rachel Beck sing I Dreamed a Dream was life-changing for me. And I made this vow that this is what I was going to do. And then it turns out a few years down the track, I ended up performing on that stage at the Theatre Royal in Titanic. So it was quite a lovely moment, but we can talk about that further down the track.
You mentioned your music teachers there from Jamison High School. So the school, as you're starting to develop this interest and this passion to pursue this as a career, you obviously get quite a lot of support from the school.
I mean, immense support. Sue Yealand, Tracy Watt and Sue Mudge and John Leadbeater were hugely instrumental in giving me confidence and giving me opportunities and going out of their way to support me. Putting, in year 7, I auditioned for their musical, and it was sort of they stopped doing musicals at that point when I joined the high school, and but they did like concert nights, and I sang I Can See Clearly Now, and I was so scared. They put me with another girl. I think her name was Cassandra. And I remember holding the microphone and just shaking. I was terrified. But they just kept saying, no, keep going. You're going to be fine. And then every year they just kept encouraging me, to the point when I was in my senior year at high school, my music teachers ended up driving me into the city for auditions for various things within the Department of Education. I joined the Sydney School Singers, which was a selective choir, and they would drive me to rehearsals there. And they would wait in the waiting room if I had to audition for something, and TDP as well. The talent development program, which was a project that I also was involved in my last 2 years of high school. So, and they came to my wedding and they flew to London and attended my wedding. So, and we're still very close. So they're family to me now.
Obviously, people, when it comes to the entertainment industry, a lot of people have dreams surrounding being in that industry. So when it comes to the end of schooling, where was your next step to be able to say, well, actually, I want to follow this seriously? It isn't just a pipe dream or a fleeting thing that a lot of people have. What was the next step to take when you kind of lost that security blanket, I guess, of school as well?
Yeah, and I did terribly in high school as well, which if I could go back, I would definitely pay more attention in high school. I failed so much of my HSC, but I did come like top in the state for drama. And oh my gosh, for my music performance for HSC, I lost my voice and I couldn't do it. I got laryngitis on the day I had to perform. Wow. So that was anyway, but I was lucky enough because in my final year also in high school, I was doing the NIDA singer actor dancer course in the evenings, which in hindsight was a lot to take on, I think, as well as the talent development program. So I think I was going to NIDA 4 nights a week, and I was finishing school, going home, getting changed, and then getting the train, going to the Penrith station, getting the train all the way into Central, and then getting a bus to NIDA. The next year when I graduated from NIDA in high school, I went straight to doing plays because I did audition for WAPA, but I didn't get in. And so I did plays, and then I did a course at the McDonald College, and it was the very first year. And I don't even know if it's still there, if they're still doing that course, but it was sort of a 1-year musical theatre course. So I did that for my first year out of high school.
And it's around that time, if I recall, that you meet Les Solomon as well, who becomes a big part of your early career.
Yes, Les Solomon and yourself.
Indeed. And I guess following into that, it was in 2002, so at this point you're only 19 or something like that. You make a debut in your own cabaret show, which is something that traditionally, I guess, had been done by a lot of older performers. Was there any question marks from others about you doing this sort of 1-hour show in your own right?
Yes. Who is this girl? Why is she doing? She's got nothing to talk about. Because what I learned further down the line is that cabaret's about you. It's about your stories, what you have to offer, your history, your experiences. And I didn't have a lot to tell at that point. I was a teenager. And I think it was called Songs from My Hairbrush, The Bedroom Mirror and Me. But I just want to go back for 1 second and say that we went to high school together.
We did.
But we also, and we only found this out, was about 2 years ago, we found out that we actually also went to like preschool together.
Preschool, we did indeed, yes. We were next to each other in a photo that randomly popped up.
I mean, is that not the most random thing?
Very small world.
Such a small world. You've been an incredible friend and an incredible support to me in my career, especially in those early days. So I have a lot to thank to you.
Well, I feel
Yeah,
like
so we're
when we did that show in 2002, Songs from My Hairbrush, neither of us really knew what we were doing, but
oh my goodness,
it
no,
was a
we didn't.
period. The end of the day, the show was a success. Lots of people there in Bondi Junction, a venue that was on top of a pizza shop that was pretty popular at the time.
I think it was called Cabaret
Cabaret
Junction.
Junction, yes.
Yeah, no, I remember it well. And I've got a lovely photo of us backstage, well, in there, in the tiny cupboard.
Next to the pizza
Uh,
oven, yeah.
yeah, next to the pizza oven. But that show actually did a lot for my career because it really kicked off a lot of things after that. Um, and it gave me a lot of confidence to do another one, another
Yes, and
cabaret.
that's a year later, of course, and that was in 2003. So those shows, they're obviously before you make your major debut, but also you were doing stuff in Penrith at that time as well. Jones
Yeah.
Sutherland Centre and various bits and pieces around Penrith Musical Society. I guess just any opportunity to get on stage in any form.
No, it's all right. And actually, sorry, I did forget to say that in the very early days of when I was in high school, I had scholarships at the Jones Sutherland Centre for singing. My singing lessons were at the Jones Sutherland Centre. Um, and I did a couple of little sort of pro-am shows there as well, and the Penrith Musical Society as well. So, yeah, I forgot to mention that bit in the beginning. But yeah, the cabaret world really did open up a lot of opportunities for me.
Indeed, and I guess the next step for any performer of that age is I guess making your professional debut, and I guess do you feel the pressure at that point because this is something that look, you could do at any age, but there's a bit of pressure on making it happen when you're a bit younger as well because of obviously all the variety of roles that are going to be open to you in the future. So was the pressure on, and when did you finally get that? So I guess professional break.
I think it was Mamma Mia, and I I really just didn't have a clue what I was doing. I had so much energy. And I think Mamma Mia is all about energy. The ensemble, it has to have to be energetic. You have to be passionate and young, and well, a lot of the ensemble roles anyway. And I think that just fit perfectly for me at the time because even though I didn't do the 3 year sort of traditional WAPA, musical theatre college,
Yeah.
Mamma Mia was where I learnt my skills as a performer in musical theatre. I learnt to pick up your costume and hang it up to, the basic stuff that you just don't know. Um, and a lot of the women in the show were obviously much more older than me and had a lot of shows under their belt, and they really took me under their wing and, taught me how to be in musical theatre and how to not only just be a performer, but how to be a decent human being as well.
And
Yeah, it
Mamma
was a
Mia
huge
gives you the
learning.
opportunity, of course, to travel the country with that show as well. So you
Yeah.
learn about touring life and living on the road as well.
Yes, gave myself food poisoning. My friend Natalie Alexopoulos in the show tried to teach me how to cook, and that didn't go very well. That was in New Zealand. But I got to go to Hong Kong. I had my 21st birthday in Hong Kong, and we hired out a nightclub somewhere in the city and got hideously drunk, and it was fabulous. And I've made some of my best friends from that show, and everyone from that cast have just gone on to do such great things. We had Sylvie Palladino playing Donna at the time, and it was just a wonderful production to be a part of. And I also got to understudy the three young leads as well. So that was a huge learning curve because you'd do 8 shows a week, but you'd be also going in on a Wednesday for understudy calls as well. So that was, sorry, not a Wednesday, it was a Thursday. Wednesday we had a matinee, yeah, so Thursday. So you'd be living in the theatre a lot, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
And probably that workload something that most people don't realise when when they jump in the theatre at a few minutes before 8 o'clock on a night for the next couple of hours. They don't realise, I guess, what goes into that workload, particularly when you hadn't done it before.
No, and you have to be at the theatre at least 2 hours before the show, and you do a company warm up on stage, and then you have 40 minutes or so to get ready backstage, and it's a whole world going on behind the scenes that you just don't know until you're there. People come and put your mic on in your dressing room, and yeah. It's all very exciting, but it's a job. You're at the theatre from 6 until sometimes 5:30 until 11, 10:30, depending on the show and the length.
We'll go through some other shows as well, but I guess the difficulty of the life of a performer, and at this point you've started a professional career, is that you don't necessarily go from show to show, so you've got to put food on the table and make money in between. And of course, you, like many other performers, end up doing a whole bunch of random jobs, including here in Penrith.
Yeah. I sang at the opening of the Krispy Kreme restaurant in Penrith near Penrith Panthers. Is that still there?
It is very much still there, yes, serving nice hot donuts.
Well, I'm pleased to hear that. Oh yeah, I did so many singing competitions for money. So many random jobs. I worked in retail. Love Sack was a thing for a while. Gigantic beanbags. There was a store in Westfield.
Now a Starbucks, I think.
Oh, is it a Starbucks?
It
now?
is.
Right. Yes. I taught singing. I did a lot of teaching as well, which helped me a lot with the bills because that paid rather well compared to working retail. But that's the sort of stuff that I would do in between gigs. But I was really lucky in the first 10 years, I think, of my career, because I'd kind of only have a month or two in between gigs. And I managed to save as well and buy myself a flat. So yeah, I felt like I was really blessed in those first 10 years of my career.
And of course, after Mamma Mia, you do Summer Rain at the Sydney Theatre Company, and then Titanic at the Theatre Royal, which is the show you mentioned earlier, that you were back on that Theatre Royal stage. Titanic, first, I guess, major role in a major musical at a major theatre in Sydney. Obviously a big moment.
Oh, yeah. It was every night. There was a scene where we'd have to be up in the gantry in the sort of the top of the ship and sing this beautiful song. And it was meant to be in the middle of the night, just before we hit the iceberg. And I just could see, in the way the lights were hit, you could just see everyone in the audience. And every night would just be like, I'm just so grateful to be here. And every night I was like, I just don't want this to end. I don't want this moment to end. I just loved it so much.
Absolutely. Now then, a whole bunch of musicals happened. One that stands out, not necessarily for any other reason than it was an absolute hoot, and obviously has sort of come back into our minds in recent times due to the loss of Shane Warne. But Shane Warne, the musical, becomes a bit of fun. Like, you're doing a whole bunch of different things, as is the life of a performer, going from something like Titanic to then doing a big musical like Assassins, which is obviously one that is a bit more serious, you could say, and then hitting up something like Shane Warne.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great show to do. Neil Armfield was the director. It's Eddie Perfect, who has become a huge household name. He wrote Beetlejuice on Broadway. He's doing wonderful things, and it was a hoot. I got to play so many different characters, and it was a rock musical, which was way out of my comfort zone because I was such a traditional musical theatre sort of pop singer, and to come in and sing rock. And I also understudied Shane's mum, and I'd sing this song about get off the couch. It was just so much fun. It really was, and the audience loved it. It was a great time in my life doing that show and being in Melbourne at the Athenaeum Theatre. And we met Shane Warne a lot. He came to opening night, and he was around loads. And yeah, I was very, very sad that he'd passed away. Really sad.
Indeed.
And hopefully his show will be put on again.
Yeah, it would be great if it was. Now, the shows just keep coming, but I imagine during this time as well that you are auditioning for things that you don't get. How do you handle the rejection side of the business when shows pop up that you desperately want?
No.
Is it just a lot of ice cream on the couch, or is it what's the plan?
Sort of eating garlic pizza with you and drinking wine on the couch. Yes. I definitely didn't handle it very well in those early days. That's something that drama schools don't prepare you for, I don't think. They say that you've got to be tough, and it's just the business. Don't take it personally. It's just a job. But I think when you love it, and we all love it, you're not in this business if you don't love it. Otherwise, it's just too hard. But I really struggled. I really struggled. There were days where I just didn't want to get out of bed. And when those shows that I got really close to getting, and there was a few where I was very close. That would
Mm.
have been just a dream, and I didn't get. And I really struggled with it. And at the time, I put on a brave face, and only a few people knew that I struggled, but I really did. And I don't know. And I was talking to my friend Hayden T, who's quite a successful musical theatre star himself, and we were both saying it just doesn't get any easier as you get older either. It's a really hard thing. And I think because you're constantly dealing with it, maybe every few months, maybe every couple of weeks, it's not something that happens to you every couple of years. It's something that happens a lot, unless you're incredibly lucky and you get every show you go for. It's tough. It's tough. It's really tough.
Of course, there's plenty of positives as well. And around 2010, you're in your late 20s, and you pick up a couple of big musicals and tours, Jekyll and Hyde and Dr. Zhivago. So they again start to take you into the touring life.
Yeah, yeah. Dr. Zhivago was such a special show. To be able to be on stage, I was alternate. Oh gosh, I've just forgotten Lara. Oh my God, Lara, and I got to go on once a week for that role, and then I played other roles in the show as well for the rest of the time. But once a week, I got to sing opposite Anthony Warlow, and my mum and my dad got to see that, and I think that's a moment in my career I'll never forget. Is singing all those beautiful duets with him is something that a young girl from Penrith who dreamed of singing on stage one day would. I don't think if I told myself back then that would happen, I don't think I'd believe her, you know. And Jacqueline Hyde was just incredible because that's a show that I would lock myself in the bathroom and sing to. I would do the whole show in my bathroom in Penrith. When I was cast the lead as Lucy Harrison, that was just, I cried singing those songs and working on that show. And so many of my good mates were in that show, and it was a wild time. Yeah, it was wonderful.
Now, around this time, I presume you're starting to think about the potential move overseas, and obviously, Australia is a smallish market in terms of I guess even the entertainment industry in general, but even more so musical theatre. When did you start seriously thinking that overseas was a possibility, and where you wanted to go as far as not just to try your luck, but actually to base yourself and to live?
I think it was around 2012, 2013 that I started to think a relationship ended that I was in, and I kind of thought to myself, it was now or never. I needed to just do this for myself. It was brave, and at the time I didn't know what I was doing, but I just had to leap. I thought, if I don't do it now, I'll never do it.
And what were those early days in London like?
Oh, they were a whirlwind. Lots of sleeping on my friend's couch in Notting Hill. I was lucky enough to get signed up with one of the top agents there in London, and I got some really great auditions and got very close to lots of roles, but didn't quite land them. I was involved in a couple of workshops, and then I finally got a workshop, like quite a high-profile workshop of But I'm a Cheerleader. Jerry Mitchell was directing, who is the original director of Legally Blonde and Kinky Boots. And that was sort of a really good foot in the door. And then I went on to do a couple of other shows. But my big sort of job, my big break was definitely doing Judy Garland, playing Judy Garland on the West End. That was definitely my big break there.
So tell us about how that unfolded. Was that just a usual audition process? And yeah, as you say, I guess that was a bit of a life-changing and career-changing moment there.
Yeah, I did audition for it. It was a fringe show. It started off as a fringe show, fringe meaning off the West End, and it was above a pub. And in London is very famous for lots and lots of pub theatres, which is wonderful. And so I auditioned for the show about Judy Garland's life, and I didn't know a huge amount about it, but I also was like, I don't think I can get away with this. I don't think I can do Judy Garland. And I think it'd be terrifying to even do her in front of people because no one can do Judy Garland. And I auditioned for it and I got it. And it was really successful that we transferred to the Savick Playhouse, which is a really popular, prestigious theatre venue in London. And we played there. And then we transferred to the West End. And that was a day I'll never forget. And I think playing Judy Garland was a big tick on the bucket list there. And all I said to myself is, I just want to get away with it. I just want to get away with it. And I did. And I got really great reviews and it was a joy.
Now, of course, during this time as well, as we reverse back up a little bit, you meet your partner in 2013, future wife, Alice.
Yes, Alice. Yes.
Now, tell me first of all about how you met, and also was this relationship in particular a surprise? Let's talk about your family first of all, and how they reacted to that.
No, I think I kind of came out when I was about 23, 24 properly.
Yeah.
But I've always sort of been interested in girls and boys. I've always been interested in both. And I never really put a label on it until later in life. And I dated lots and lots of women in Australia. Lots and lots of women. But yeah, I dated women in Australia.
Yeah.
So my family knew about that. And I wanted to meet someone when I came to London, and I don't think dating apps were a huge thing back then.
Yep.
It wasn't even that long ago, but it wasn't, we'd still go out to clubs and stuff like that. But I joined a lesbian basketball team. And I don't play basketball, but it was an opportunity to meet people, and it was amateur. It wasn't professional. It was like community sort of thing, and that's where I met Alice. And we've sort of not looked back since then. And we got married in 2017, and we have a little boy called Rufus, who's 2.5, almost 2.5. And we're really happy.
Tell me about Rufus. Yeah, born in 2020 in the midst of the pandemic.
Oh, yeah. He was born 2 weeks before the lockdown, the very first lockdown. So I was lucky enough to have him in hospital with Alice by my side. But I think if I had had him 2 weeks later, I would be forced to have him on my own. So we're very lucky in that way. I mean, it was a blessing in a way because Alice suddenly had to work from home.
Yep.
So she was only given initially, I think, 3 to 4 weeks leave initially. So, and then she would have had to gone back to the office. But I think having her home, working from home, was a huge blessing amongst all the sadness that was going on in the world. It was a blessing to have her there. But it was tricky, because we stopped getting, you have health visitors come and check the baby and things like that, and GP appointments all stopped, and everything was over video, and it was a very isolating time as well. As you couldn't see family, you couldn't see anybody, and it was scary because it really was the first early weeks of COVID when no one really knew much about it, and it was terrifying. And throw in a newborn baby in the mix. It was a very isolating time, but also a blessing because we just got to bunker down and focus on our baby.
I'm guessing the pandemic as well, being a performer and entertainer, puts some brakes on your career as well.
Yeah. I mean, theatre just shut down, didn't it? Shut down all over the world. I couldn't believe it when Broadway closed, the West End closed, and Australia closed. It was unbelievable. I think I think theatre is now still struggling a lot. There's this backlog of shows waiting to open that were meant to open 2 years ago that are now just opening now.
Yep.
It's been very tough on lots and lots of people. I feel lucky that I've had Alice working continually throughout this time. But it's been really tough on lots of people. It really has.
And career-wise as well, I'm guessing that parenthood and career and this type of career can be a difficult juggle too.
Yeah. I
Which
mean,
you've
I would have taken a break anyway
yeah.
because I wanted to focus on being a mum for a bit and experience that and not have to do the juggle just yet. And it was only, I think, November last year, I went back to work on a show. And was it 2 months ago now, we closed. And that was the Good Enough Mums Club. And it was actually a musical about motherhood. And everyone in the show were mums. And the producers wanted to try and figure out how they could do this show and provide childcare. And we were in the rehearsal room. We had childminders there. We had one woman breastfeeding while she was singing, and we'd go on tour and they would put us up in family-friendly accommodation, and they would organise nannies and childcare. And and it's quite a new thing because I think 70% of women leave the arts after having kids.
Yeah.
And this company in particular is trying to change that. And I think the UK theatre industry is moving towards the idea of role sharing. There's still a long way to go, but it was refreshing to be a part of that. And I'm currently on my own personal journey, trying to have a second baby at the moment through IVF. So I'm taking a little bit of time out for the next couple of months to focus on that. But then I'll definitely go back into the world of theatre and get back out there. But at the moment, I'm just taking a little break and just focusing on hopefully having another baby.
And of course, London is very much home. Ever any thoughts on returning to Australia?
Yeah, always thinking about coming back to Australia. I think the goal would be to come back and do a show, a contract, and be based in both countries. Ideally, I think that would be the dream. I think when Rufus is a little bit older, I think that would be something we might look at doing.
Because of course your mum is still, I know, based in the Penrith area. She's yet to meet Ru in person. It's been a challenge the last couple of years.
She's not met Ru yet, but we are planning on coming home in the next few months, maybe for Christmas. That's the current conversation that Alice and I are having.
Yep.
So that's the plan, hopefully, to come back for Christmas and see Mum. So hopefully we can make that happen.
What about career goals that still exist? Because obviously you've ticked a lot of boxes through the years. You've ticked it all in Australia and then now in London. Do you still have specific goals, or is it more so just about, hey, I just want to, as crude as it sounds, just stay employed in the arts? What's the where do you sit there?
I think I've always I just want to work. I love working. I love working in the theatre. I love being on stage. And I know that sounds really a bit wanky, but it's true. I just love it. And for me, I really do just want to keep working in whatever way I can in the theatre. I think I'm now going into a different age bracket now in casting. And I think a lot of women my age are finding that we are going into that different casting bracket now, which is kind of exciting because there was a while there where I was sort of hovering in between and getting a bit misplaced. And I think as I get a bit older, I feel like there's hopefully, I think they are writing more mature roles out there. And I think I'm hoping that that's something that I can achieve in the future. I want to do cabaret as well. I want to get back out and do cabaret and write some more cabaret shows.
And potentially perform it here in Penrith.
Absolutely. That would be the plan. Yeah.
What would you say to somebody now who is in Penrith, potentially there at Jamison High School, at the beginning of the same path that you were? Things have obviously changed as far as the industry and opportunities and whatnot these days. But what would your message be to them?
I think to have tunnel vision is really important, to stay in your lane and not compare yourself to other people, and don't let people tell you that it's too hard, because that will just pull you down. And if it's something you love and it's something you're really good at, then you should keep going and not give up. And there's so many opportunities out there. In New South Wales, in the Department of Education, they offer so many opportunities for talented people, talented performers, and I think you've just got to reach out and apply for every course you can get into, get those lessons, get scholarships, apply for everything, get help, train, learn, and just say yes. Say yes to everything when you're starting out.
The final question that we always ask, a difficult one sometimes, how would Belinda Wollaston like to be remembered?
Gosh, I think I'd like to be remembered as someone who had the best time living life and who came and maybe brought some joy to theatre audiences. But I think ultimately, maybe I was a wonderful friend and wife and mum.
All right. Well, we wish you all the best of success in the future, both as a mum and on this new journey that you're on, and of course in your career as well. And we appreciate you joining us from London.
Thank you, Troy. It's so nice chatting to you.
And I hope you enjoyed our chat. On the Record is produced by The Western Weekender. To hear future episodes, search Western Weekender wherever you listen to podcasts, and make sure you hit subscribe. Check out westernweekender.com.au, and we will see you next time.